Mr. Jones owned a cotton plantation and many slaves. One day he was talking to the owner of the plantation next to his, and Mr. Jones was lamenting the fact that times were tough. He was having to work his slaves harder than ever, and was having trouble with some of them being disobedient or trying to run away. The other plantation owner said he knew someone who could help.
Day 1.
One day Mr. Jones called his slaves together so a man named Mr. Smith could talk to them. Before beginning, Mr. Smith whispered to Mr. Jones, "Whatever I say, do not contradict me or interfere, and I promise you your slave troubles will end." "My name is Mr. Smith," he said to the slaves, "and this may be the happiest day of your lives. From today forward, you will no longer be slaves, but free men." Mr. Jones was so shocked he started to step forward, but Mr. Smith gestured for him to remain silent. He did, only because the other plantation owner had spoken so highly of Mr. Smith's skills. "You are no longer the property of Mr. Jones," Mr. Smith continued. "You are free. No more would you be forced to labor for the benefit of Mr. Jones. Now you can work for yourselves." Now the slaves were all murmuring and looking at each other. Many were smiling, many were looking puzzled. "In fact, you are now free to leave the plantation whenever you want," Mr. Smith said. "However, since we are surrounded by other plantations, if you leave, some other plantation owner will likely claim you as his own the moment you set foot on his property. So I urge you not to risk your newfound freedom by doing something so foolish. Instead, I suggest that you stay here, no longer as slaves, but as willing participants and part owners of this plantation. Yes, this is now your plantation." Mr. Jones bit his tongue to keep from objecting. "For now, we might as well leave Mr. Jones in charge," said Mr. Smith, "since he is the only one with any experience at running a plantation, which is quite a complicated thing to manage. But he will no longer be your master, but just another worker on the plantation. In fact, he will now be using his organizational and management skills to serve you. Whatever problems you may have had with him before, you are now all equals, and you need each other to make this work. If we all cooperate and work together, we can all reap the benefits together. In honor of this happy occasion, I present you this new symbol of togetherness and cooperation, this flag, which shall be the emblem of the new, free Jones plantation." He held up the new flag, but most of those listening were still too amazed to respond. "And this shall be our motto," Mr. Smith announced. "We work together as free men for our mutual benefit, pledging our allegiance to the Jones plantation, which stands for prosperity, liberty, and justice for all. To celebrate, everyone has the rest of the day off. Enjoy your freedom, do as you please, and be back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, so that we may begin work on this great and noble new endeavor as equal free men." Finally convinced that Mr. Smith was serious, the former slaves applauded and cheered.
Day 2.
"We all want this plantation to do well," Mr. Smith said at the beginning of the next meeting, "so we can all share in the benefits. We all know that it takes a lot of effort to make a cotton plantation work. Just because you're all free doesn't mean you can stop working. In fact, since you're now working for yourselves, I expect you to work even harder than ever before, but now with pride and joy, knowing that you're working for yourselves. Of course, there still have to be rules. If everyone just does whatever he wants, the plantation won't produce anything. This experiment will fail, and we'll all starve. You should be thankful that Mr. Jones has agreed to stay on to lend his knowledge and skills to this endeavor, and I trust you will all do your own part to make this work. Several of you have been chosen to act as project supervisors to manage different aspects of the operation, to make sure everyone is doing his assigned job, to make sure that the rules are followed, and so on. The rest of you may head out to the fields to start your first day of work as free men."
Day 3.
The next morning, Mr. Smith had a grim expression on his face as the daily meeting began. "I have an unpleasant duty to do today," he said. "Yesterday, Charles was caught keeping some of the cotton he picked, presumably to sell for his own personal profit. That is against the rules. That is stealing. For that, Charles must be punished." 2 men tied Charles to the whipping post. "I take no joy in this," Mr. Smith continued, "but you must understand, if we do not maintain order, if we do not have rules that we all abide by, then the plantation will fail, and we will all suffer." The whip cracked against Charles' back. "But if we all pitch in for the common good, then we can all prosper. Being free doesn't mean you should be selfish and greedy. We must each do our assigned duties and obey the rules, and then we can all benefit, and each of you will receive your appropriate share of the profits." A young man named Samuel stepped forward. "But if you and Mr. Jones decide the rules and whip us if we disobey, how is that any different from what we had before?" "How can you say that?" Mr. Smith asked. "I'm shocked. You were a slave before, and now you're free. Things still need to be managed and organized by those best qualified to do so. Do you know how to run a plantation, Samuel?" "Well, no," he answered. "But if we're free, why do we get no say in what the rules are and how things work?" "I'm surprised at your ingratitude," Mr. Smith answered. "None of you know how a plantation is run, so you're in no position to be making decisions about how things are done here. You don't seem to appreciate all the things that Mr. Jones provides for you, from protecting you from all the outside threats you know nothing about, those who would come here, capture and enslave you if not for Mr. Jones' protection, to making sure that you all have food and housing, tools to work with, that you're cared for when sick and injured, and so on. There wouldn't be a plantation at all, no cotton to pick, no land to plant and harvest, if not for him. You should be grateful that he's made possible the level of comfort you now have. Your lives would be far worse if not for him. Nevertheless, as free and equal participants in this endeavor, from now on at each meeting, any worker may have 2 minutes to ask questions or voice suggestions or complaints." With that, the workers all seemed satisfied and headed out again to the fields to pick the cotton.
Day 4.
"I have a big announcement," Mr. Smith said as the daily meeting began. "Mr. Jones' cousin is here, and not just to visit and see how our project is coming along. It has been decided that from now on you will be deciding who will manage the plantation. Of course, this job can't be done by just anyone, but every 3 months we will have a special meeting at which all the workers will vote on whether we think Mr. Jones should run the plantation or whether we think his cousin, Mr. Johnson, should run the plantation. That means that ultimately you are in charge, because you will be deciding which man you want running things on your behalf. If you don't like the way things are being managed, you now have the power to change it." Amazed and pleased, the workers headed out again to the fields to pick the cotton. Days passed, months passed, a year passed, and the plantation continued to operate as before. Sometimes Mr. Jones was in charge, sometimes Mr. Johnson was in charge, but the day-to-day routine stayed exactly the same. The workers worked hard, long hours every day, and still had little to show for it. Every day the meeting would begin with them all reciting the Jones Plantation motto, "We work together as free men for our mutual benefit, pledging our allegiance to the Jones Plantation, which stands for prosperity, liberty, and justice for all." One day Mr. Smith announced, "Samuel is asked to say a few words this morning, and whatever the rest of us may think of his ideas and opinions, we are all free here, and that means we are all allowed to speak our minds. So, Samuel, you have 2 minutes. Begin." Samuel stepped forward, looking scared. "I was excited when all this started," he began, glancing nervously at Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones. "But don't you all see what's happened here? Nothing has changed. We're all still slaves." There were grumbles of disagreement from the crowd. "They tell us what to do and whip us if we don't. They still make all the rules and punish us if we disobey. They let us make suggestions and complain about things, but they never really change anything. They let us choose between Mr. Jones and Mr. Johnson, but what's the difference? The situation stays the same. We do all of the work and they take as much as they want and decide how much they'll let us keep. They live in luxury, made rich by the cotton we pick. We do all the work and have to build our own huts, grow our own food, and take care of ourselves. They leave us just enough that we don't revolt or run away. This is not freedom. We're all still slaves. They've only changed the words they use, but nothing else has changed. They say we're all free and equal, but we're not. They command and we obey. That's not freedom. That's not equality. They say we're free to leave, but all that means is that we're free to be someone else's slave. Why should we work or obey the rules? We didn't agree to this. They made the system. They forced it on us. They control and rob us and call it freedom. They've deceived you into thinking that being able to choose which slave master you'll work for is the same as being free. It's not. Open your eyes. If you keep what you produce, they call it stealing. When they take what you produce, they call it sharing and fair distribution. Can't you see that this is all? Your time is up, Samuel, Mr. Smith announced calmly. At his gesture, 2 supervisors grabbed Samuel by the arms and led him to the whipping post. I'm sorry, Samuel, but you've broken the rules. There are rules against encouraging others not to work and encouraging others to break the rules. You're only hurting all of us with your discontentment and your complaining and your disobedience. The whip fell, and Samuel let out a grunt. Without rules, without order, all would be lost. Without law, there would be chaos. We can't just behave as wild animals, each doing whatever he pleases. We must all follow the plan and all do our duty for the betterment of everyone. And those who do not must be punished. The whip fell again, and blood flowed freely from Samuel's back. Samuel, it is you who are stealing from the others. When you don't do your assigned work, you are making more work for others. When you disobey the rules, it is you who are endangering the future of everyone else here. You are the thief. You are the criminal. You are the one trying to destroy the arrangement that keeps us all safe and prosperous. At every lash of the whip, the other workers cheered louder and louder, some yelling curses at Samuel. Being spoiled and selfish, you complain about everything, talking as if you're oppressed. But you are the one ruining things. You are the one keeping us from being all we could be. It is your greed and your rebelliousness that is hurting all of us. They all play by the rules, Mr. Smith said, gesturing at the others. What makes you think that you don't have to? You think you're above the law? There were loud yells of agreement as the whip fell again. We must maintain order, Mr. Smith proclaimed. To make this plantation great, to make it so that we can all be happy and prosperous. To have the society we want, there have to be rules. We all have to contribute our fair share to this great endeavor, and we cannot tolerate actions and attitudes that seek to undermine the amazing things that together as free men we have achieved and will continue to achieve. Mr. Jones was smiling as he gave Mr. Smith a pat on the back. The crowd was cheering so loudly that none of them had noticed that Samuel had died.
National order that we have worked for generations to build. Ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
What's up, YouTube? It's Biblical Truther. I hope you guys realize that that had nothing to do with the slavery as we know it, but the slavery of all races and ethnicities here in America. I'm not sure how many of you guys have seen that before, but it perfectly explains the situation we're in today, which is exactly where the end of that little video was. And then Obama, you know, I played that clip before also. But that's what these people believe, and I can't remember exactly when this was, but Mike Pompeo said pretty much the same thing. Check it out.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
It was from 2015, but it was played again after Trump became president, and there was a lot of people going around asking what this man meant, and it's not the first time or the only time that he's said that. I think he said it just last year, but I didn't want to spend all the time trying to find that clip, but I think this has been spoken of forever, really. Just we as Americans don't want to see our government as that tight, but perhaps it's been said many times in the past and we just perceived it or heard experience, because that's what we would rather hear than this being an experiment, because most experiments either have a determined outcome or multiple determinable outcomes, and either way they're ready for it. So this is just meant to polarize Americans, you know, to keep them guessing, to just like the whole Custer thing and Trump, you know, they didn't do anything on the 20th like all those supporters were saying, and now you have General Flynn and another General Heinth, I don't remember his name, but they're steady tweeting and talking about these things. You know, Linwood, I think, is still putting messages out there that it's still going to happen. But I just don't think so. I don't think so. There for a while, I thought, you know, Satan would, you know, put on a show to make us believe that they're arresting all these people just to deceive the whole world. But I still think that's what Trump did, and I would rather think that they're still gonna do this, you know, act it all out, just to further deceive the world. But then again, it could go either way, man. They got a commie in the White House now who will definitely do their bidding, and they have now, just like I said yesterday in that video, they have now singled out conservative Christians, or just conservatives, and not necessarily have to be Christian. But I mean, if you're a Trump supporter, then you are labeled as a domestic terrorist. And I found this video yesterday. It's pretty shocking. Check this one out.
On or before January 20th, Donald Trump will no longer be the commander-in-chief. He will lose control of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Special Forces, and America's nuclear arsenal. On January 20th, Donald Trump will become the commander-in-chief of a different army. This army. The greatest threat facing America today comes from within. Radical extreme conservatives, also known as domestic terrorists. They are hidden among us, disguised behind regular jobs. They are your children's teachers. They work at supermarkets, malls, doctors' offices, and many are police officers and soldiers. For more than a decade, Donald Trump has spoken directly to white supremacists in their language.
Build that wall! Build that wall! Build that wall! Pocahontas? Is it offensive? Oh, really? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
In the middle of a presidential debate, Donald Trump was asked to disavow white supremacy. He refused. Instead, he told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by.
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
They heard their leader. They even responded to him on Twitter promising to stand by. And on January 6, 2021, Trump greenlit them. They suited up. They flew in. They took hotel rooms. They loaded their weapons and prepared their bombs. And they attacked with the intention of killing Nancy Pelosi and hanging Vice President Mike Pence.
They were vocally saying, "Where's the speaker? We know she has staff. They're here someplace. We're going to find them."
In the years ahead, Trump will lead his army of domestic terrorists. He will encourage and incite violence. He will play the role of arsonist and fireman. He will start a civil war and then say things were more peaceful when he was president. We have to fight back. In this new war, the battlefield has changes. Computers can be more valuable than guns. And this is what we need now more than ever, an army of citizen detectives. I'm proposing we form a citizen army. Our weapons will be computers and cell phones. We, who are monitoring extremists on the internet and reporting their findings to authorities. Remember, before the Navy SEALs killed Osama bin Laden, he had to be found. He was found by a CIA analyst working on a computer thousands of miles away. It's up to you.
But you see how the mainstream is going to play this. This was trending on Twitter the day of the inauguration into yesterday, and that is quite shocking. And just as Governor Cuomo up there in New York said, you know, snitches get rewards. Well, this is why the Bible says that your worst enemy would be, you know, members of your own household, where you know, mother turns against daughter, father against son, neighbor against neighbor. This is what they got in the works, man, and the Bible foretold it. So absolutely expect it. My wife said I should make a video telling everyone to buckle up, because I do believe persecution has begun, but for the sake of the deceived, they have to do lawful acts, which we all know are unlawful, but you know, legislation through the correct chain, just so those who support this type of thing don't, you know, get the gist of what's going on. But man, I hope people wake up, because Biden's up to no good. He's released a thing within his new stimulus, you know, the whole Help America Get Back to Work thing. The stimulus package that he's looking to sign is $1.9 trillion, where it's gonna it's going to cost you getting vaccinated for you to get your stimulus money. And I kind of figured that was going to go down with him. But it's not just that. I seen this article yesterday. Let me read it for you. Look. I want to read a little bit of this article just to see where this country is headed after day 2 of what I'm calling persecution, the beginning of persecution in America. It says that the president's plan emphasizing ramping up testing for the coronavirus, accelerating pace of vaccinations, and providing more funding and direction to state and local officials, meaning pretty much that they're going to start telling the state and local officials what to do. Key component of the plan is restoring trust with the American public, and that's not Trump supporters or the awake people who know that that was all a deception to begin with. It also focuses on vaccinating more people, safely reopening schools, businesses, and travel, as well as slowing the spread of the virus that we have a 99.9% chance of getting over, given we don't have any serious underlying conditions. The national strategy provides a roadmap to guide America out of the worst public health crisis in a century. America has always risen to the challenge we face, and we will do so now. Nearly 3,000 Americans are dying every day of false COVID. Let's just not read that part. And this data is coming from Johns Hopkins University, which we know is pretty much just another arm of the falsehoods of the deep state, quote unquote. But what I wanted to get to as far as businesses go, let's see where it's at. See, this executive order called a Sustainable Public Health Supply Chain will also direct the development of a new pandemic supply chain resilience strategy in an effort to bolster domestic manufacturing of critical supplies, because they are going to make this a permanent mandate of this country. It's past time to fix America's COVID response supply storage problems for good, Biden says. His plan says. But the main thing I wanted to get to is right here is one of them. Biden will direct the Federal Emergency Management Agency to set up 100 community vaccination centers in the next month. That's from the day of his inauguration, 100 in the next month as part of that effort. Similar to the Trump administration, Biden's plan will also encourage states to move quickly to expand the groups eligible to receive the VC. To bolster trust in the government's response, the White House will establish a CV-19 response office charged with coordinating the pandemic response across federal agencies and establishing clear lines of communication down to local officials. The federal government will also conduct regular expert-led briefings, the plan says. The next main thing that kind of shocked me is this fact, and this is going to destroy America the rest of the way. The new plan also calls on the Occupational Safety and Health Administration excuse me, to take on a larger role, setting clear guidance to employers on safe workplace practices and enforcement. If you don't know who the Occupational Safety and Health Administration is, that is OSHA. And if you are a commercial business or establishment, then you are held to OSHA standards. And I have no doubt with all the contact tracing they plan on hiring and implementing, they're going to also probably overstaff the OSHA department, because right now there's not many people that come along and check our job sites and these restaurants and all to make sure they're in compliance. But once they roll this regulation out, you can almost guarantee that they're going to have many, many people policing this thing. It says Biden will establish COVID-19 health equity task force to ensure vaccines, treatments, masks, and other resources reach everyone, including harder hit communities of color that have suffered from disproportionately high death rates in the U.S. or death rates that have been attributed to this fake thing going on here. And then he says he's got another stimulus coming out for $1.9 trillion that our birth certificates are going to be collateral for, because apparently we don't have that kind of money because it's all in our corporations' pockets. But if you read the proposal called the American Rescue Plan, includes $350 billion, $170 billion, $50 billion, $20 billion. That's a far cry from $1.2 trillion. So just as in Trump's stimulus packages that he signed, I imagine the other 1 trillion, 1.4 trillion of that is probably going overseas, along with the rest of our businesses, which is just mind-boggling to me. So as I stated, the last two things at the end, OSHA being the main one. Once OSHA comes out with their new regulations, that's going to cause every commercial business, every single one of them, to be compliant with these regulations. And if you're not familiar with OSHA, it's the Occupational Safety and Hazard Association, and the fines that they can impose on a business is astronomical. I mean, if you're caught in a scissor lift, a man lift with no harness on, that fine could be in the tens of thousands of dollars. Having an aluminum ladder on a commercial job can be in upwards of $15,000 to $20,000 fine. So I could just imagine what type of fines they're going to put in place over this COVID thing. So that's going to definitely make every business comply, and most are not gonna, and I think that's going to have a lot to do with forced vaccinations. If you want to have a job, you're going to need to be vaccinated. If you want to go to Walmart, you're going to need to have the vaccine. If you want to do anything, you're going to have to show proof that you've got your vax. And it's definitely coming, man. The social credit system from China's on the way. I mean, it's fixing to get extremely bad, guys. But I don't even know where to begin as far as the propaganda that's fixing to come out, on the mainstream. You thought it was bad before. It's fixing to get probably 100 times worse. So I want to show you this video right quick from Mini Fish.
Hey, Mini Fish. 21st of January 2021. We're still here, but don't you worry. Things are a-changin'. Just wait a minute. But I wanted to show you this because there's just no coincidences when it regards to this. Look at this here. Florida is America's super COVID hotspot with 46 cases of the highly contagious UK variant that has sickened at least 146 people in the U.S. and spread to 60 countries. Florida, where Trump headed off to yesterday morning as they swore in the 46th president, right? And the United States allegedly hit 406,000 deaths related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Go figure that out. And then Trump heads to Florida, and what's waiting for him? 46 cases of the highly contagious UK variant, known as B117. And it's very feared. You must fear everything, right? And so when I saw this, I just did a very quick little search, that's all. I put in for the last week, or the last day even, the past day. The further you go down, it gives you older results. I mean, not only did we have Trump, who, don't forget, was born in 46, as he went back to Florida yesterday, leaving Washington to the 46th president that was sworn in yesterday. The COVID deaths in the U.S. hit 406,000. Texas had a bad day. They reported 10,000 new cases and 46 new deaths. Maryland didn't do very well either, reported 2,166, which is interesting. 216 is 6 times 6 times 6. And they had 2,166 newly confirmed cases. And Maryland, right next to D.C., where Joe Biden lives, had 46 deaths. This is from today, and this is just insane. Ontario reports 2,632 new cases and 46 more deaths. Can you believe this stuff? Marion County, I think this is Mississippi, they've counted another 46 new cases in the past 4 days. Oh, this is from a couple days ago. Sorry. 1 death, 46 new cases, and 78 recoveries of the COVID reported for Quad County. Isn't that awesome? Oh, we got paywalled, but you can still see it. Iowa adds 46 deaths and 601 new cases. Massachusetts reported 7,424 new COVID cases and 46 more deaths over 2 days. And it goes on. But I just wanted to share that with you, particularly this, because this is just, there's no way around this right here. No way around it. Same day, Trump 46, Biden 46, 406,000 deaths in the country. The new variant is here, and Biden promises to be the COVID warrior. And right along with all the other so-called world leaders, they are launching a full-scale attack on your temple. You see what I'm saying? So, prepare yourselves, spiritually above all. God bless you. Peace and grace to you.
And as you can see, many states are coming out with the same deaths or a variant thereof. It's kind of crazy how they do this, but this is kind of the invisible handshake that they're giving to our new president, that they're on board, each state. And if you think that the Democrat and Republicans are different, then if you hadn't seen the little montage that people put together back in March and April, when Trump was still president, when all this first came about, when he declared a national emergency, there were city after city, town after town, state after state coming out, giving their little, imaginable handshake to Trump, that they were on board and ready to do the whole shutdown thing, the whole mask, everything. But back then, it was 33 deaths. And you could probably still find a vast majority of those news clips of almost every state. I want to say it was probably 47 of the 50 states that when COVID first hit, every single state of those 47 had 33 cases. 33 cases everywhere. So that was the invisible handshake, that they were on board, ready to go. Whether you live in a Democrat state or a Republican state, it doesn't matter. I live in a Republican state, and he swears, when Trump was still in there, he swears that he would never mandate masks again. But now that Joe's in there, they might try and stand up against them, but ultimately they're gonna fold to the federal government, because that's where the money's coming from. That's where the federal funding, and then the Corporation of America's getting their funding from the international bankers. I don't know if you remember the guy from I forget what country in Africa, but he was one of the prime ministers or whatever he's called over there. Whenever they were trying to do the second wave extreme lockdown, this man came out and straight up told everyone they're trying to give him 10 times the amount of money to do a hard lockdown than they did for the initial one. So And I hope you guys aren't being fooled by all this, but I know there's many people that are still holding on to the Q thing and the Trump thing for dear life. I work with one of them. He's a head over heels supporter for Trump, and he don't want to believe that there really is no such thing as Democrat and Republican. It's all the same party. They just control the narrative from both sides to get us bickering and fighting with each other. That's how they're gonna bring this prophecy to fruition, by turning turning everyone against each other. And it's very sad, but it's absolutely gonna happen. It's already happening. And when they start throwing in the rewards thing, like over in China, they get rewards for ratting on their neighbors and just people they probably don't even know. They're making money. There's quite a few videos that came out where these people are saying they make more money snitching than they did working. So most of them snitches don't even have jobs anymore, other than, telling the officials who's doing what, or not complying, or saying something bad against the government, anti-establishment types. And that's exactly where this country is headed now. And it's sad. It's real sad, but I hope some people can wake up, man. That video I played at first, the little I call it the Great American Experiment, because that's what they called it in there when they were talking to the quote-unquote slaves, which we are all slaves now. That's basically where we're at. They spelled it out to a T. Whoever made that little cartoon hit the nail on the head, man. That's exactly how they played America. And now people are convinced, just as those who were cheering when Samuel died, it's going to be the same type of situation, man. There's going to be Americans cheering while their fellow Americans are being put to death, possibly at something, that they could have prevented or probably caused by way of snitching. But I hope this is going to wake some of these people up that are still polarized in this left-right deception that they have going, because you can go back through history and see how they did it in Russia. That's how Putin became, president for life over there. They did the same thing over there. They funded all these movements, what looked like different movements, all at the same time, and had the people fighting each other. And it was all orchestrated by a handful of people. And this has been done throughout history over and over and over and over. And, aside from the poison that we have to ingest, or don't have to, but that we ingest through the spraying of the skies, through the Monsanto products, through the fluoridated water, which is, sad to say, most people don't realize that is radioactive waste that they put in our municipal water supplies, and we drink that crap. It's just crazy, man. It's so crazy. I'm still praying for this country. I'm praying for all my brothers and sisters out there, especially the ones who still believe in Trump. He did his role perfectly. He set us all up. Well, not us, because I was never part of that, aside from the first probably 4 to 6 months of his presidency, when I believe the Lord showed me how the deception was working worldwide. So this is not just localized to America. This is a worldwide thing. There was a lot of people around the world who were fully on board with this Q stuff. But I want to end this video with this quote. from Hans Fritschie, I think is how you pronounce it. He was a German official during the Nazi era. Fritz, radio propaganda chief, by manipulation of the truth, goaded German public opinion into frenzied support of the regime and anesthetized the independent judgment of the population so that they did, without question, their master's biddings. So they definitely use propaganda, and they got the people thinking they're having original thoughts when they're being played, man. They're being played, and like I've told you guys in the past, that's one thing the Lord has shown me over the past couple of years, is that is Satan's greatest tool, is our emotions. If you allow your emotions to be manipulated and you get just so invested in these political back and forth shenanigans, these plays, these political theaters that they got going on. And it's not just that, it's they use everything. They use sports, they use politics, they use sad to say, but I mean, it goes, you can apply that to just about anything where there's opposing sides. That's on purpose. They do this stuff on purpose, and it's for a purpose. And it's sad because the vast majority of us just don't see it. We don't even catch it. Man, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen all the correlations with the Hunger Games. I've had a lot of people laugh at me when I told them that's where America was headed, because if you take the Hunger Games map from the movie and you side by side compare it to the 10 FEMA regions that they've already established to divide America up into, it's pretty much identical. And just as in the Hunger Games, this section, this sector of America handles agriculture. This section over here handles industry. This one over here handles, whatever else. It's where we're headed, man. And I pray that our Lord and Savior is not that far off, and I'm not talking just a couple of years. I'm talking, months, and that may be selfish on my part because there's still a lot of brothers and sisters that need saved out there. But I just don't know. Man. I just don't know. I feel for those who are still deceived in this left-right paradigm. But all we can do is pray, man, because we are not to get involved in this theater, because it's ultimately going to keep us divided. And as Jesus said, a house divided cannot stand. And that's exactly where they have us. But I hope you share some of this information with somebody, or at least show them that little cartoon thing in the beginning, and hopefully they can make the correlation, to the life that we live in this country, and how that was played in the past. That's how we got to this point. I wanted to add this in real quick. Last month, December 18th, I was on my way to my company's Christmas party, and I'm pretty sure I shouldn't have attended, but the only way I can get paid for a full day was to attend, so I went. And on my way there, I seen this. This is a mobile clean hand solution. There's two more behind that truck. And look at all these. Has anybody seen these before? These are brand new. Brand new. There's a little smaller one. Mobile Clean Hand Solutions. Look at all of them. What in the world you suppose they need them for? And I'm not exactly sure what they have these things built for, but there was probably 30 of them there. And they were just sitting there, brand spanking new. So I don't know what's coming, what's in store for us in our future with this administration, but I think these play a role, and probably something that they're gonna, some type of rule they're gonna have in place to where these things have to be everywhere, and everyone who attends any type of outdoor event or whatnot, probably gonna be made to clean up so they don't infect anyone. And it would probably be, you know, the people who receive the vax, because they'll be the only ones who get to go anywhere. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. But pray. That's all I can tell you guys. Pray, man. I love you guys.
Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints,